it's staying gracious, it's staying humble, but I think it's also speaking up and letting your partner know, hey, I feel dishonored when you do this, or I don't feel heard, or hey, can you look and see that I spoke to you here and then I spoke to you here and you're still not listening? Can we talk about why you think it's okay to dishonor me? And so I had some of those conversations with Andy, but it took a real wake-up call where something happened.
So for everybody in business, I'd be like, you're an idiot not to actually trust the person that you put your head down on that pillow each night. They see you, they know you, and they've got your back more than anybody else. And they've probably got a lot of gifting, plus they're free.
Welcome to the Holy Spirit at Work podcast. I'm Katherine Burnett with Global Awakening, and I am here with Janine and Andy Mason from Heaven in Business. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Katherine.
We are excited that you're here, and we're going to tackle a topic that can be a point of contention for married people, partners in business, and lots of different areas that can have just some tension when we talk about husband and wives working together in ministry, in business. So if you guys would just start off sharing some nuggets that you've learned of how you work together.
Yes, dear.
I like that one. Apparently that one would work.
No, so that's a passive aggressive, really. It doesn't work. What would you say? I think probably some context of married 25 years. We've got 4 kids. The kids are still alive. The kids are now pretty much 18, 20, 22, and soon to be 24.
That's right.
And they're all going in different directions. So there's been season change, continents change. We've shifted across from the West Coast to the East Coast of the United States. I've worked in employee roles. You've done project management. So we've pretty much done everything. And then we started a ministry and a nonprofit, and we travel and speak and write. And there's all of that in there.
Yes.
And
I married my best friend, and she's still my best friend.
That's amazing.
But there's been moments when it hasn't felt like that, if we're honest, really. So I think if we were to say some tips, I think one of them was just to honor one another. And I think that's taken 25 years to get to the place that we're at now. It really didn't come easy. So when we were first married, Andy tried to change me into him. And that didn't go so well.
I bet not.
Yeah, so he would
and
kind
context for that is it was not.
Yeah, you can defend yourself. Yeah, context.
This is, and for people watching, you won't realize that you're doing this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's never I'm going to make you me. It was out of a desire to help, a desire to serve. It was just narrow and misaligned and blind.
Yeah, and of a good
and
heart,
then it achieves the opposite.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think if we can learn really what we've learned over 25 years is to honor one another and to see the differences and to embrace the differences when you do that. Now, how you do that, that's, we can break that down a little more maybe, but I think that's the journey, is really learning to say, you're very different than I am. And that's the beauty of how God has brought us together, that there's things that I bring to the relationship and things that Andy brings to the relationship, which makes it work beautifully when we can mesh together, not become one another, mesh together and keep our differences and use those differences. That's when we're at our best.
How did you learn how to start recognizing the differences between the two of you?
It's interesting because we're having kids young too.
Well, early in our marriage, not necessarily young, but early in our marriage.
Yeah, so I think if there's one word that keeps coming up, it's intentional. And I think for me, one of the things that would have been the greatest key that I would say everybody should get is a marriage counselor. And not a Christian pastor who also happens to do some counseling. No, get a professional. Any high-performing team a high operating team has coaches, counselors, consultants to help them become the best they can be. So if you're going to operate at a high level, if you want a high level connection, partnership, relationship, then why would you not get somebody. And the other part of it is because we've had this commitment to one another, nothing hidden. So we'll talk about everything. Well, sometimes it's not best to talk to your spouse about something that you're really fired up about. Have it with somebody else, get it clear, then have the conversation. So having that would have really helped probably me get some more wisdom.
Yeah, that was only a more recent learning. So if we'd had that in our early days, and don't wait until you're in crisis and it's all going bad. Actually, think of it, as Andy said, as a high performance coach taking you from good to great.
Yeah.
That's definitely helpful.
So being intentional, having somebody external. And we got a bunch of different ways of doing that. I think the other thing that's been a gift for us is being able to observe, being in different environments, observing different leaders. And it's like, man, I don't want a relationship like that. And seeing that, and that person is portrayed as, the best at what they do. And I'm like, if that's the best, I just don't want a part of it, because that just does not look healthy. And you see, typically the man is the CEO, the boss, the owner, and she's at home miserable. Or it could be that the man is the pastor, the leader, and she's making the coffee for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, I didn't marry somebody like that. I married somebody that's equally powerful and different. And I want two powerful people, not one that's subservient.
Have you felt that people have embraced that with the both of you? Like, hey, they're both powerful people? Or have you found that culture would dictate who they look to?
Yeah, like my book.
So we wrote, your book, yeah. Our first book that we wrote was Dream Culture, and we wrote it together. And I probably did more of the work on it, honestly. And it had both of our names on it. But for years, many, many people would come up and, oh, thank you so much. Would you tell your husband that I just loved the book that he wrote? And I'd be like, and inside I'd be like, I wrote that and I wrote more than he did. And then I just had to learn to let it go and say, well, okay, it doesn't matter that I'm getting none of the credit, but somebody was impacted. That's the main thing. But inside it was really difficult because I knew I had definitely added my value in there. And so culture definitely, certainly in the church world, culture would say that man is the head, that he's the guy, and you're seen as the wife who knows nothing, did nothing. And in our case, Andy was working full time and I was raising 4 kids. And so for many years, that was mostly true. But again, they didn't realize that there was conversations happening at the dinner table or after dinner where Andy would be saying, this is what's going on in the business and what do you think? And I was actively involved, but just not visible, I guess.
So it's a constant thing. You walk into an environment where there's 2 people, there's a business involved, and 99% of the time we'll walk up to the man. And 99% of the time it might be right, but it's not helping.
Yeah. So I think we have to be intentional to say that if a couple is in business, even if whichever way round, it's usually the man that's the key guy, not always. I know that it wasn't the case for you, Katherine, but I think we have to be intentional to say both people are in business, even if one has a less active role, that there's something that's valuable that other partner has added in, man and woman, that we need to recognize, and even if it's a minor role.
I think too, you mentioned one of the things, and Janine, you said honor. I think one of the gifts that we've had is lots of different leaders who've taught us lots. So Danny Silk, culture of honor. Bill Johnson and how he walks and operating and honoring people all around him. Lots of different leaders and different, Ford Taylor with his book Relational Leadership. All of these things, and realizing that just because someone's got a title doesn't mean that they're a person you should even listen to.
Right.
It's not always that, and recognizing that sometimes the most influential person in a workplace is the person that answers the phone, because they're the key to everything else. So if I think that it's a pyramid and I'm trying to get to the top, and who's at the top, then you're going to find yourself sabotage short changed because you're never going to access the value of the entire group of people. So rather than creating that environment, and I think that's probably one of the keys that has really helped us, not just within us, because then I'm recognizing, oh, it's not about just a position. It's about what's your gifts? How do we do this together? Where can I step back, because this is Janine's strength? Where does she where does she step back? Where does she defer? That honor preferring one another. And I think there's some real practical skills like Strength Finder, like the disc, and like love languages, Cloud Intense. All of those things help in this process. And if you're living with the person, better get it right, because it's like otherwise it's miserable at home. So all of those skills really, really help.
What would you say to the traditional mindset? And Andy, I'll pose this question to you, where people are like, I'm the man, I work in the marketplace, and my wife does stay at home, or she does the books for my business, that kind of thing. But it's my business, it's my baby. What would you say about maybe creating more of an equal
So I'd say
partnership or
start
balance?
one, if you're a follower of Jesus, then look at the model, and usually the belief, and that God's the boss and he's got Jesus and the Holy Spirit working for him. If you have a hierarchy view of how God operates, that's going to affect everything. But then if you go back to how did they honor, prefer, defer to one another, it's like, who's really in charge? Well, I'm not really sure. So that starts with that, and then flows from there. And then history would say, and I would say I'm learning and still learning in this, because so my background is banking, finance, and I have my natural gift is favor and trust. So people trust me quickly. They favor. So I'll literally lost my mobile phone, and the person that found it for me gave me a private plane ride. And they found that literally happened. So it's just stupid favor. There's nothing that I do. So that's favor. And then I've got a financial gifting and ability from both training and background. So bring that into a marriage, then it can work like, well, I'm the one that gets us the money. So my voice is more important.
How's that working?
Yeah, and how that worked was, and one of Janine's giftings is strategy and discernment. So just like I trust people, or people trust me, I trust people. And
everybody.
So what does that look like? So, well, I got the money, I get this, so I think we should lend this money to this friend. And Janine has a hesitation about it, but well, I'm really the one that is making the decision. Now, I might not say this out loud,
Right.
but really my voice should be stronger in the situation, because 9/10 of what's going on in money is up to me. So pride comes before a fall. God resists the proud. We just don't realize that the gifting that we're placed with us, if I think this is my business, it's my gifting, and I'm the one in charge, just put your seatbelt on, get some life insurance, because you're probably going to need it.
Yeah.
So what did that look like? Because I didn't listen to my wife, we loaned money to two different friends. I know you're not supposed to do that, but we did it. I did it. And both of them repaid it over longer than what was committed. Both of them damaged the friendship and the relationship. And both of them caused some conversations in the revealing of how I had dishonored my wife's voice and value. And if I had truly honored and valued and esteemed her, the amount of stress, pain, and difficulty we would have avoided would have been untold. So for everybody in business, I'd be like, you're an idiot not to actually trust the person that you put your head down on that pillow each night. They see you, they know you, and they've got your back more than anybody else. And they've probably got a lot of gifting, plus they're free.
Yes,
so why would you
free.
not? Yeah. Now they shouldn't be. That's another conversation. But I'm saying, yeah, if it's your business, well, you'd be stupid then, because you're actually, it's like what we talked about earlier, is you're operating your business on 6 cylinders when it could operate on 8.
Well, and God in his graciousness put you with someone that complemented. So for an individual to say, I don't need the input because they're not in the day to day is really short-sighted.
Yep.
Wouldn't you guys say?
Absolutely. And I think not in the day to day. I don't know how other couples, but he would come home from work and we'd be talking anyway. So although I didn't know every detail, I had the big picture enough to often have insight of which way we should go or shouldn't go, and to get a feel for different people in the organization and maybe they're not in the right place, how that should work. So I think, yeah, don't discard somebody because they're not in the day-to-day. They're not in every decision. If you're talking, then you really do have a fairly good idea of what's going on, enough to maybe ask questions and probe further.
And then practically, so now the kids are pretty much last 2 years really left home.
Yeah.
And then Janine has stepped up more. And so even the intentionality about the shift, so where she's been my pillow partner, pillow advisor, and round the table going for walks, bouncing things off, to then a more active role. So what's that been like for you?
Well, I think so. I was at actually one of our events and the Lord said to me, I need you to see yourself not just as the wife of the owner, but as a co-owner of the business. And really that changed everything for me because those roles are very different. So one was just, like you say, the pillow partner, the talking at home. I've got an idea and I'm putting into input where I think it's really necessary. And then the co-owner means, man, I'm involved with all the decisions and I'm actively involved in what am I doing to bring my strengths. And that was a real challenge for Andy because he'd had this business for 10 years.
I got
This
autonomy.
is my baby. And now you're coming in, and it was hard because I would say, well, how about we do it this way? And he'd be like, but I've been doing it this way and that's the best way. And now you want to mess with it. And it was an adjustment. There was a wrestle on the inside of how am I letting you have half this baby? Now, I would say that I did, the majority of the active parenting in our house.
Yeah.
And if he suddenly came in and wanted to change
Hey, we should
everything,
change the way we're doing this.
yeah, I probably would be offended too. Like, dude, I'm the expert. So I recognized that it was difficult, and he was very gracious about it. But it was quite a challenge for both of us, for me to step up into new roles and to face things and to do things that I hadn't been doing before, and for Andy to let go of some things. And he still is in the position where at times he'll make a decision and I'll be like,
did we talk about that?
Wait a minute, how come you're making that decision? What, this co-owner didn't hear about that? And I forgot.
Yeah, I just wasn't thinking about the co-owner. Wasn't thinking.
I wasn't thinking. I just went ahead because it seemed good to me, and that's what I used to do. And so me having grace for him and recognizing actually it's really difficult to give up his baby, and me stepping up, I think we're still in that journey, and it's a constant journey because roles and responsibilities change and flex all the time. So talking is huge, and having honor and recognizing your own internal world. So for Andy, at first he was just kind of, but not fun to be around. And then once he actually took time and spent time and recognized, oh, this is what's going on in the inside of me, I actually kind of feel a little bit resentful that you're coming into a new level and this is my baby. Once he could identify that, then he could start to articulate, like, just give me a little bit of time to
use your words, Andy.
Use your words. Yeah. So
she doesn't say that, by the way, but that would be what I would say to myself. Andy, use your words. You're behaving your emotions.
Yeah. So again, it's that thing of honor. Like, I honor what he has and what he's done, and the things that he's put in place. But I can also come in and say, hey, I love that you've done that, and I see why you did that. But in this new season, I think it's time for us to go a different way or to emphasize this. And so I think it's all about honor, that I learned to honor, and even honoring the fact that he was kind of grumpy. Okay, but it's because he's held this and he's actually taken responsibility for that. That's actually a good thing to honor. So looking further and using our words to figure it out, being determined. We are going to figure it out. I think that's the thing. It would be easy for both of us, easier to go our separate directions because we're both fairly determined, both fairly wanting to go in a direction. We're both opinionated. We both believe we're right a lot of the time. It would be easier, but knowing that the Lord has brought us together, and so we'll work it out. We will wrestle it through
So
until we get
a belief that together we're stronger. 1 + 1 is not 2. 1 + 1's 11 or 11,000. So that belief, then honor humility. So okay, this is going to be different. That's then another key is knowing strengths. So I'm a visionary leader that can stumble into opportunities. Janine is strategic and she can see problems ahead of time. So what does that look like? I come with an idea and she'll tell me all the ways it won't work. And I'm like, and so I've got to be aware of that. And then she needs to be aware of that. So being aware. And I think then some real practical things. We'll go walking. We walk together pretty much every morning. And we'll talk about what we're hearing the Lord say. And then if one of our kids comes walking with us, they'll get frustrated because you guys just talk about work or what Jesus is saying. Not all the time, but probably most of the time. So we have that. And then what we realized is, actually what Janine realized is, hey, we can't just go through the week, go. We need some touch points. So we actually put into our calendar 10:45 a.m. every morning, 15 minutes stand up. Hey, is there anything we need to know? It's like, oh, well, actually, yeah, I got this big decision I'm about to make with a retirement fund that's maybe it's $10,000, and I didn't talk to her about it. It's like, oh, well, if we'd had that 15-minute meeting, maybe we would have. Yeah. And so all of those little things in there, that's been really helpful.
I love that. Touch points, intentional touch points, too, because you do get busy or get back into the old routine.
Yep. Let's go.
Of what was. Well, you talked a little bit earlier about allowing or recognizing that when you made decisions, you didn't give her a voice. And then I'm sure for years, sometimes feeling not like you had a voice. What would you say to the people that are watching of maybe where they felt dishonored, where they didn't have a voice, or they've been the individual in the relationship, or that they've just made the decisions and it by default has taken the voice away from the other partner?
Well, it just depends how much pain they want to go through first.
It's true.
Yeah. So, and that's
for
where
Andy, it took quite a bit of pain.
It took quite a bit of pain, and they realized, oh, I didn't even know I'd done that. So, and that's where I would say marriage counselor, but also, so not just a marriage counselor. I've got men around me that I know, that I trust, that know me, and that Janine has their phone number, so that she can call them and say, Andy's been a dork. Like, would you better have a conversation with him? And we've set that up mutual with different people. That is also really, really helpful, because I think most of the time we don't want to intentionally be an idiot. And so there's just a humanity around it. So I need some people around me to help me.
Yeah. And if you're the person without a voice, I think I hadn't seen it as clearly as when we started to get help, as I don't have a voice because I am opinionated and I do speak up. And so I think it's staying gracious, it's staying humble, but I think it's also speaking up and letting your partner know, hey, I feel dishonored when you do this, or I don't feel heard, or hey, can you look and see that I spoke to you here and then I spoke to you here and you're still not listening? Can we talk about why you think it's okay to dishonor me? And so I had some of those conversations with Andy, but it took a real wake-up call where something happened and I knew that I just felt so dishonored. And so I made a decision, like, you were going to live in the other bedroom until you recognize how much I'm feeling dishonored. That was his wake-up call and we'd never done that. We'd made a decision before we got married, we would never sleep in different bedrooms because we were mad with each other. And I wasn't mad. It was just like, I knew.
Clueless.
He was clueless. I trusted his heart towards me was for good, but his actions got to the point where, like, I know you need to see that what you're doing is really painful to me, because I knew he wouldn't want to do that. And so I think for somebody who's feeling like they don't have a voice, it's actually beginning to communicate. Perhaps you've tried in the past and it's failed. It's actually starting to communicate again, like, hey, this is how I feel. And I know it's not your heart to dishonor me, but it does feel really dishonoring, or I'm not feeling heard. And is that how you want our marriage to work? And so oftentimes, I think you're going to need to get that counselor in to help you have that conversation. If you've been ignored and ignored and ignored, then perhaps it's time to get a trusted third party in to say, hey, your wife is feeling ignored.
I think another part of that is if the person has not had that voice, so I can discount her because, well, she hasn't got the business background that I've had, or the finance background that I have had. So then for someone who hasn't done that, as you say, there's a change in season, you're going to be more involved, more actively involved rather than passively. Is do the training, do the learning, do the listening, read the books. So actually just even a little steps towards leaning in to show I am learning. The other part is if someone's a silent partner, and we've seen this, I've seen this with a very, very successful business person, and his wife was just leaning on the fact that I'm the wife and coming into the business environment and just making a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that.
Right.
So we're assuming people listening to this is not going to do stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the practical things? It's just coming in and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to get a coach, a life coach, to help me navigate the next season of my life. And I think within that is, if the business has a clear vision, knows what the business is, where the business or the ministry, whatever it is knows where it's going, and that's agreed on together, that's going to help. And knowing roles is really important. What's my role? Well, my role is to take care of this, this, and this, and her role or strength is this, this, and this. Okay, that's going to be the clearer that you've got those things, all the other things are going to be easier. And I think the other one is we went away together and did a mini sabbatical. And my recollection is the last time that we did that was probably 10 years ago. And a part of it was the drive of, like, we've got to get this done. So we're so wired differently. And my drag or driving Janine into my ideal future of where I'm seeing we going, because I can perhaps see it clearer in that moment. And then doing that, was the start of this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Janine communicates to me, you know what, I'm not sure if I'm looking forward to this. And I'm thinking, okay, tell me more. And then going in, rather than saying we're going to do let's do this process this, and we're going to break it down like this, rather than doing that, saying, okay, what would be the most helpful way to bring out the strengths of my spouse? Well, rather than having my process, what if we just have a buffet of things that we would need to talk about over these next 3 days, and then you pick which one we talk about first? And how was it?
It was so much better because before I always felt like the lesser partner. Mm-hmm. Because he was running everything. He had his agenda. And because I had been less involved, I didn't have as much to say. But when he presented it as a buffet, I chose the things that I was ready to talk about. I knew what was on the agenda. I could come prepared. And actually, there was moments where I brought some real good insight that changed the way we were doing things. We were like, oh, we can make a whole lot more money if we just did this one thing.
Like if you've got a team and you've got a bunch of raw players and you've got one that's been playing in that role for 10 years, and then you've got some new team members, well, you don't 100% know that that's their role. It may change. And so you've got to have the flexibility to be able to adjust and adapt. And so that's when we're working through, okay, so there's some things that Janine's ability to write, to articulate, to put things down is 1,000 times better than mine. And so then as we walk that out, there's also some other things she's going to be doing that'll be independent of what we do together, and being that's okay. Mm-hmm. So there's this, I know where we're going, I know what we're doing, and it's flexible. Mm-hmm. So that's...
And I think it's the continual stepping up. and facing new things and new challenges. So there's lots of things that I'm doing now that feel really uncomfortable, and being willing to be uncomfortable for both of us. It's uncomfortable for Andy to give away some of his power, and it's uncomfortable for me to step up knowing that he has this gift of favor, knowing that everybody looks to him, and often I'm discounted. That's a really uncomfortable place to keep stepping up, where at times I know I'm not wanted in the room. And I have to choose. I'm going to come in, and I'm going to not push my way in, but I'm not going to step back. I'm just going to come and be and see what the Lord will do. And so I think for each of us, being willing to be uncomfortable, being willing to adapt and change and say, okay, this is a new season, and I have to face the fears. I have to face the voice of the enemy that says you can't do it, and continually leaning in. I don't think that process ever stops. I don't think you should ever get to the place where you're so comfortable because you've done it all before. If you're there, then you probably have got stagnant, because we're always in our walk with the Lord. We're always going into new territory. We're always doing new things. And there's always that discomfort of, can I do it? Yes, you can, because he's with us.
Yes. Well, we covered so many great points today. And I think even for the people that are watching, they're like, hey, I'm not married. You touched on a point, like the team, like who you work with. How can you develop them, or realize maybe where you've stepped into a position that is not ultimately the best for your design or the best for your voice, or have you shut down other people's voices? So I appreciate so much, Janine and Andy, you guys being here and sharing with us today at the Holy Spirit at Work. And if you guys want more information for Andy and Janine, you can go to their website, Heaven in Business, and just really glean from them as well. So thank you so much for being here, and God bless you both.
Thanks for having us.